Hello there and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming on our individual destination to men's nirvana. Well, today I'd like to give you my top 10 tips to make your clothing last longer. Because let's be honest, being an intentionally well-dressed man is an expensive business. Many of the items of clothing and footwear in your wardrobe represent a substantial financial investment over the course of building those collection of items. So it's manifestly important that you get maximum wear, maximum value, maximum longevity out of all of those items. So today I'm going to give you my tips that will hopefully make your clothing last to the maximum extremity of their expected lifespans. Now, my first tip is an easy one. It doesn't cost a lot of money and it'll be with you for many, many years. And that is invest in a good clothes brush. Now, when I say a good clothes brush, it doesn't have to be expensive. This clothes brush I purchased 32 years ago when I joined the military in the UK. I bought this to take with me to boot camp. It's got my name written on the back still, and I still press it into daily service. What do I do with my clothes brush? I use it every time I wear a suit or a jacket, or when I need to brush something off my clothing. But certainly, every time I wear a suit, I will use the brush to make sure I clear any detritus or dust or little deposits of anything which have landed on my clothing throughout the day. That way, it keeps the clothes nice, clean, keeps them free of dust and all those other things that can be harmful over, an accumulation over a period of time. But very importantly, it means that my jacket, my suits have to be professionally cleaned less often. And that is an important thing. So a clothes brush, small investment, will last you a lifetime and it will pay you back immeasurably in the longevity of your clothes. My second bit of advice is quite straightforward again. It is to make laundry an art form. All right, so most of us see laundry as a chore, something that we just need to do and we want to get through it as quickly as possible, get it done, we don't pay it any thought. But actually, being effective at your laundry processes is what really, genuinely adds length and longevity to the lifespan of your clothing. Right, for a start, learn what the symbols on the laundry instructions are for your individual clothing. The last thing you want to do is put something in the washing machine which is dry clean only. It will typically destroy the clothing. So learn what those symbols mean and, use that instructions to make sure those clothes last longer. Other simple things you can do, make sure that you wash your delicates by hand and as infrequently as possible. So your cashmere sweaters, for instance, only wash them when entirely necessary, because every time you launder them, it'll reduce a little bit of their lifespan. They won't last as long, they won't look so good. Where possible, dry your clothing outdoors, air dry them, put them on the laundry line, the washing line in the garden or any outdoor space you have access to. This is far more gentle on your clothing than putting them into a dryer, where everything is tumbled up together, friction takes place and clothing gets damaged, holes occur, your clothing lifespan is significantly reduced. Other things you can do, never dry dark coloured clothing outdoors, for instance, where it's exposed to ultraviolet light, because that will bleach the dark colour away. So your dark jeans, any black shirts you may have, t-shirts or whatever, dry them indoors away from ultraviolet light. That way the colour will stay fast for longer. So as I say, the best thing to do, embrace laundry, make it a genuine art form. Now, whilst we're talking about laundry, my next tip is along the same lines, and that is to dry clean your clothing as infrequently as possible. Now, I want you to think about your suit or your garment that you're thinking about taking to the dry cleaners. Remember, it only has so many visits to the dry cleaners in it before it starts to look worn out and tired, and basically you're not going to want to wear it anymore. Imagine it's only got, say, 30 visits to the dry cleans in its entire life. So what you want to do is space out those visits as far apart as possible to give your jacket or your suit as much lifespan as possible. You know, only take your garments to the dry cleaners when absolutely necessary. Don't take them just because you've worn them once or twice. You know, only take it to the cleaners when it needs to go, when it's looking a little bit grubby, a little bit grimy, or perhaps really just before it gets to that point. But certainly don't take it to the cleaners as a matter of course just because you've worn it for 3 or 4 times. And if it gets stained, if it gets a mark on it, spot clean those little marks. You know, only treat those marks, brush them off, get a wet rag, try and get those marks off. Don't automatically take it to the cleaners because you've got a small stain on your jacket sleeve. As I say, it'll use up one of the 9 lives of your jacket, if you want to think of it like that. So take those garments to the dry cleaners only when you really have to. Now, when it comes to the storage of your suit jackets and blazers, it's absolutely worth making an investment in some decent wooden coat hangers. These will allow your jackets to drape naturally. They'll discourage the formation of creases, and they're just going to look a lot better the next time you put them on. Cedar wood, for instance, also discourages moths, so it has a dual purpose. And when you're storing those jackets in your wardrobe, don't scrunch them all up together. Make sure there's a little bit of room between them. It allows them to drape so much better. Now, if you're one of those people who put your jackets on those wire coat hangers that you often get things back from the dry cleaners on, you know, that is absolutely not going to help at all. They don't offer any support. They will encourage the formation of creases in the sleeves and in the body of the jacket, and it's just more work for you in the long run. So get those wooden coat hangers, an investment which will pay you back over time. Now, while we're talking about storage, let's stay on that theme, because storage makes a really big difference on the length of time your clothes will last. To give you an example, now I live in the UK, it's a temperate climate. So I've got warm weather clothing and cool weather clothing. So half of my wardrobe is in storage at any given time. As you can imagine, you know, the way that I treat those clothes when they're stored really does impact how long they're going to last, how good they're going to look. For instance, I can help those storage solutions, like not storing my clothes in plastic containers, because that promotes heat, moisture. It'll encourage the breakdown of my clothing. It might even encourage things like moths. Moths, for instance, let's stay on that theme. Moths can be devastating to your clothing. I've been the victim of that in the past. They will munch through your wools and your delicates, and you know, it'll ruin them. There's nothing you can do about it when you've had a moth attack. So, you know, always do things like using cedar wood hangers. You can use lavender to discourage moths, and there are lots of other insecticidal solutions which you can place in your wardrobe which will discourage moths. It's a really good way of dealing with that. Where possible, it's best to store your clothing in cotton covers or natural fabrics, which will allow them to breathe and will be better for them in the long run. The other thing you can do is to store your clothing away from harmful ultraviolet light, which will bleach colours and do all sorts of damage. Store them in cool, dry places which are protected from moisture, excessive heat and things like that. That way they will be, you know, nice, fresh and clean, ready for the next time you want to wear them. Now, my next tip is one which nobody is really going to enjoy, and that is come to terms with ironing. All right, because mastery of the iron is a bit like mastering a black art. I know people hate it. I believe that ironing has been voted the United Kingdom's most hated household chore. And I fully get that. It's boring, it's tedious, nobody likes doing it. But being an effective ironer can really impact on not only the longevity of your clothing, but definitely the way that your clothing looks when you wear it. There is nothing better than a finely pressed shirt or a nice crease down the leg of your trousers to show that you're somebody who looks after the details when it comes to your clothing. So for a start, invest in a good iron. I personally like steam irons. You know, you add that water, it's a bit more gentle to ironing your clothing when you've got steam to assist in smoothing out those creases. the ironing board as well that you use. You know, if you're one of these people who irons on the corner of your dining room table because you don't own an ironing board, well, it's well worth investing in a well cushioned ironing board because it'll help you, it'll do some of the work for you when it comes to those ironing processes. So it's worth investing your time in understanding ironing, what works for your clothing the best and how it will look the best for you. Because remember, the finest garments you've got, if they look crumpled and creased, they're not going to look very good. And it is so easy to ruin a wonderful shirt just by scorching the material if you put the setting on your iron at an incorrect level and you burn the material. So learn how to iron well, understand the iron that you own and invest in a decent ironing board. Now my next tip is one which I've turned into an art form in my life, and that is to have a decent shoe care kit. Because let's be frank, your footwear is possibly some of the most expensive items in your wardrobe. For sure, they're going to be some of the most long-lived items. You know, you invest in a decent pair of shoes, they're going to last for decades. And that's important because your shoes are the foundation of your outfit. You dress from the ground up, and that's how people will perceive you as well. If they look at you, they will look at your shoes and draw an assessment of your character by the way that you're dressed. So it's really important that you learn how to look after your shoes well. And a good way of doing that is to curate a decent shoe care kit. So you've got the items at hand to look after those shoes. Now, at the very least, you're going to need some form of conditioning shoe cream. I'm going to say Saphir Renovator because I'm a fan of Saphir. I'm not endorsed by them. I don't get anything off them for saying that. But over at least a decade of using all different types of shoe care products, I have found Saphir Renovator to be probably the best product I've encountered. So you're going to need a shoe conditioner like that. Then you're going to need a shoe cream because shoe cream will add colour and it will add luster to your shoes. It'll look after them. They're going to look great if you use those two things in conjunction. Finally, you're going to want to invest in some shoe wax. Now the wax gives you the shine, and if you're so inclined, it will allow you to bring those shoes up to a mirror shine. You know, the elite look that any intentionally well-dressed man will seek to have on his footwear. So, you know, just by investing in those items in your little shoe care kit, you're going to be doing fine. You're also going to need a decent quality brush. Now, it's worth investing in a brush because potentially, a bit like that clothes brush, it could be with you for life. So before you go out and buy something incredibly inexpensive, totally synthetic bristles, I would say think for a moment, do you want that brush to be with you for 20, 30, 40 years? It might be worth putting a little bit more money into it. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. You know, the brushes I have are under £20 and I expect to last them for my lifetime. So think about that shoe care kit because, you know, these things, your shoes, they are your pride and joy. You've invested a lot of money in them. They're going to look good with your clothing and they're going to form the judgment that people make in you. So look after them, invest in that kit, and they will look after you. Now, staying on that theme of shoe care, one absolute essential that you definitely have to have is wooden shoe trees. Personally, when I buy a nice pair of shoes, I go online and I purchase a pair of wooden shoe trees which I insert into those shoes and they stay with them forever. That way I'm not left out with not enough shoe trees for my nice shoes. Shoe trees needn't be expensive. They can cost £20, £25, and when you bear that into account of the cost of high quality men's shoes, it's a drop in the ocean for what they do to you. Shoe trees will allow your shoe to be stretched, right, when you place them in the shoe. This means that creases don't form. They encourage the absorption of moisture from within the shoe. They help the shoe to dry naturally. As I say, they help the shoe to retain shape. And cedar shoe trees like these also discourage odours. They'll absorb odour because it's a fragrant wood, and it just is such a better experience if you use shoe trees within your shoes. So every time you buy a nice pair of shoes, go a little bit more and spend just a few pounds to buy yourself a pair of wooden shoe trees that'll keep those shoes looking their very best. And don't forget, The same goes for your leather sneakers and training shoes, right? So if you've got some nice white sneakers that you wear in the summer months, they're made of leather too. Put the shoe toe in, it'll keep the shape, it'll absorb the moisture, it'll control unpleasant odours caused by bacteria within the moisture of the shoe. It'll do a fantastic job for you at a very modest price. They'll never wear out, they will be with you forever. A worthy investment for any intentionally well-dressed man. So staying on that subject of looking after your shoes, shoe horns, all right? These are essential because if you are in the habit of forcing your feet into your shoes without using a shoe horn, every time you do that, you do a little bit of damage to the shoe. You damage the structure and the integrity of the heel of your shoe, and over time, it will break down the eventual longevity and lifespan of that shoe. You know, there's nothing you can do to gain back that integrity once you've damaged it. So always use a shoe horn. They cost virtually nothing. In fact, I can see that this particular one I seem to have found in a Sheraton hotel at some point, and this is a shoe horn which came with a pair of shoes from Herring. I use this one as a travelling shoe horn, and this one I just have where I put my shoes on every day. So have as many as you like. Throw one in your bag for when you go on holiday and trips away, so you can never be without a shoe horn. Always useful, never wear out, with you for life. Again, a worthy investment if you can't find them. So another thing you can do to help prolong the life of your clothing is to rotate your clothing regularly. All right, so if you wear the same suit every day, all the time, it's going to wear out a lot more quickly than the other items in your wardrobe. So if you've got a favorite suit, make sure that you don't favor it in your wearing rotation all the time, because it will wear out quicker than that other navy blue suit that you only wear once a week. So make sure to swap them out often. Now this is particularly important when it comes to your footwear, because leather shoes should not be worn day after day after day. If possible, you want to allow your shoe to rest for at least a day to allow it to dry out thoroughly, because shoes, just by the nature of being worn on your feet, take on moisture. And that moisture, if it's not given time to dry, will cause bacteria to form, and that's where unpleasant odours are created, and obviously the eventual breakdown of the shoe. So try and rest your shoes for at least a day between wearing on a wooden shoe tree to allow it to stay in shape and to absorb those odours and that moisture. Okay, so we've got to the end of our top 10 tips to help your clothes last longer. But because you've stayed tuned, I've got a bonus for you. And that is, quite simply, to respect your clothing. If you treat your clothing well, it will look after you in return. What do I mean by respect? Well, if you force your jackets on the hangers into an overstuffed wardrobe, they're all going to get creased up. It's not going to do them any good at all. They're not going to look good. If you take your jacket off in work and you place it on the back of your chair, all right, it's not going to drape properly, it's going to get creases, it's going to get lumps and bumps in the shoulders where they shouldn't. Take the time and effort to put it on a coat hanger and hang it up. Look after those clothes. Store them properly in between wears. If you've got nice quality jumpers, fold them neatly. Don't hang them on a hanger where they drape down and they lose their shape and integrity. Look after your clothes, treat them with respect, and they surely will treat you well in return. So, I hope you've enjoyed these tips on helping your clothes last longer. If you have, I would encourage you as ever to give us a thumbs up, and if you're not already a member of our Chap's Guide community, click the red button and join our club. I hope you all stay safe and well, and I will see you again very soon. Until then, take care.